Welcome to Mill History Talk, the podcast where strategy meets storytelling, unpacking the drama, decisions, and disasters of war so you understand not just what happened, but why it still matters. The views expressed on Mill History Talk are those of the hosts, writers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any government agency, military organization, or institution. This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. Okay, this is officially episode 66 of Mill History Talk, and it is a special episode. We are testing some equipment upgrades, so if I sound extra smooth, confident, and professionally dangerous, that's not me. That's the mic. Also, more importantly, I got a parking spot.
That feels like the real headline. Where is it?
Motorcycle lot.
Of course it is.
It still counts. It's close. It's convenient. It's tactically decisive terrain.
So, biker chick Hope, you buying a Harley?
No, I am in the market for a moped.
Even more on brand.
Fuel efficient, low profile, economical, very Luftwaffe 1939 energy.
And like the Luftwaffe, we'll see how it performs in a prolonged conflict.
Perfect, because today we're talking about exactly that. Welcome to Mill History Talk, the podcast where strategy meets storytelling, unpacking the drama, decisions, and disasters of war so you understand not just what happened, but why it still matters.
And today, episode 66, is a special book review desk episode, and an unofficial test of whether Hope's new microphone improves her already questionable confidence levels.
It absolutely does. Today, we're walking through 10 of the best books on the Luftwaffe in World War II. All right, before we jump in, I do want to officially thank Brian for helping out at the book review desk today.
That sounds ominous.
It is, because normally, Brian does not do book reviews.
I'm aware.
He's usually too busy, which I believe is code for, I don't want to read what you told me to read.
Or, I've already read it, and prefer not to turn it into stand-up comedy.
That's fair. But today, Brian is here because his additional duty is tech upgrades.
This is true.
So what you're hearing right now is Brian reluctantly pulled into the book review desk because he touched the equipment.
This feels like mission creep.
It is. Welcome to staff life. So, here's how we're doing this. I'll call out the book and author, Brian will explain why you should care, and I will interrupt him when necessary.
I have no doubt.
So let's frame this properly. The Luftwaffe enters World War II as arguably the most effective air force in the world.
Highly trained, well-led, and integrated into operational maneuver, especially in support of blitzkrieg.
Fast, efficient, aggressive, kind of like someone who just got a great parking spot.
Temporary advantage.
Wow, already turning on me. But here's the problem. The Luftwaffe was built for a short war.
And it found itself in a long one.
Which is where things start to feel less like a Harley and more like a moped in the motorcycle lane.
Underpowered and increasingly vulnerable.
Exactly. And if that sounds familiar, it should. Because we already tackled this question in Can Air Power Win Wars?
Episode 63.
Great episode. Strong energy, good analysis.
And remarkably accurate.
As always. Okay, let's get started. Book 1, The Luftwaffe War Diaries by Kajus Becker.
A chronological operational account from the German perspective.
This is the Luftwaffe's internal narrative.
And it reveals how they understood the war as it unfolded.
Which is important, because early on, the answer is, we are absolutely crushing this. And later, we are less crushing this. Book 2, Strategy for Defeat by Williamson Murray.
The best analytical study on the Luftwaffe.
If you only read one, read this.
It explains the structural weaknesses.
And all the decisions that seemed like a good idea until they absolutely were not. Book 3, The Rise and Fall of the German Air Force.
A post-war British assessment.
This is the Allies going, let's explain, calmly and professionally, how you lost.
With supporting evidence.
Book 4, Fighter Aces of the Luftwaffe by Tolliver and Constable.
Focuses on individual pilots.
The Top Gun energy.
Without the strategic success.
Exactly. Great pilots, losing war. Book 5, JG-26, Top Guns of the Luftwaffe by Donald Caldwell.
One of the best unit histories.
And this is where you realize, being elite does not save you from bad systems. Book 6, Stuka Pilot by Hans-Ulrich Rudel.
A first-hand account.
With opinions.
Yes.
Read it. But maybe don't let it be your only source. Book 7, The Luftwaffe over Germany by Caldwell and Mueller.
Focuses on the defense of the Reich.
Also known as We Cannot Stop This. Book 8, Eagle in Flames by E.R. Houghton.
A narrative of decline.
The everything is on fire and we are out of options phase. Book 9, The German Air War in Russia by Christer Bergstrom.
Covers the Eastern Front.
Where scale wins, and the Luftwaffe does not. Book 10, The Luftwaffe 1933 to 1945 by Jeremy Dixon.
A strong overview.
If you're new, start here. If you're not new, this confirms what you already suspect. Okay, Brian, we need to talk about this list because I have questions, serious questions, possibly formal complaints.
I was wondering how long it would take. Go ahead.
How do we put Stuka Pilot on this list, near the top, and somehow leave off Adolf Galland, commander of fighter forces, defense of the Reich, the guy literally arguing with Goering while the air war is collapsing around him. And we're like, nah, we're good.
All right, that's not entirely unfair, but there is a rationale here.
Oh, good. Please explain to me how the Luftwaffe's senior fighter commander gets bumped for a guy doing solo tank hunting side quests on the Eastern Front.
Rudel's value, setting aside everything else, is that he represents the extreme edge of tactical execution. If you want to understand what a single pilot could do at the absolute limit under total war conditions, he's the case study.
He's not a case study, Brian. He's a boss fight.
That's not wrong. But Galland is writing at a different level. He's not just flying, he's managing. Fighter allocation, pilot attrition, fuel shortages, and political interference. That's a more complex, but also more interpretive account.
Right, which is why it belongs on the list. Because if I'm trying to understand why the Luftwaffe is losing the defense of the Reich, I don't need one guy telling me how many tanks he destroyed. I need the guy in the room saying, hey, this is not working.
And Galland absolutely does that. He's one of the few senior figures openly criticizing Goering, questioning strategy, and recognizing that the system is breaking. But that also makes his account selective.
So is Rudel's. Rudel's like, everything is fine, I will simply destroy another 40 tanks today. Meanwhile, the Reich is collapsing behind him.
Fair, but Rudel gives you something Galland doesn't, a view of morale at the tactical edge, where the war still feels winnable, even when it clearly isn't.
Okay, but that's exactly why you need Galland too. Because Galland is the moment where reality catches up. He's basically the embodiment of Clausewitz's culminating point.
There it is. I was waiting for Clausewitz.
You're welcome. I have a brand to maintain. But seriously, Galland shows you the system under strain, leadership friction, the mismatch between orders and reality. That's not optional reading. That's the lesson.
I don't disagree. If the goal is to understand why the Luftwaffe fails, Galland is more useful than Rudel. If the goal is to understand how individuals fight inside that failure, Rudel has value.
So what you're saying is, we should have both.
Yes, what I'm saying is the list probably over-rewarded spectacle and underweighted institutional insight.
Thank you. That's all I wanted. Closure, validation, historical justice. All right, the list with small revisions. Coming in at number 10, and Brian, I feel like we've learned something today because this list is already better. We've got The First and the Last by Adolf Galland.
And that's a correction worth making. Galland isn't just a pilot. He's the commander of fighter forces during the defense of the Reich. He's dealing with the collapse of Germany's air defense system in real time.
Right, and unlike some memoirs, this isn't just, and then I shot down another plane. This is, here's why the system is failing. Here's why leadership isn't adapting. And my personal favorite, here's why arguing with Goering is a career-limiting move.
It's one of the few insider accounts that actually captures institutional friction, not just combat, but command dysfunction.
And if Clausewitz had a podcast,
He wouldn't.
he'd absolutely have Galland on as a guest. All right, number 9, Stuka Pilot by Hans-Ulrich Rudel.
And this is where we get the opposite perspective. Rudel represents the tactical extreme, what one individual can do in combat, even as the larger system is collapsing.
Yeah, this is less war analysis and more human highlight reel. Like, this man is out here rewriting what we thought was physically possible in a dive bomber.
But it's important to read it carefully. Rudel's account tells you a lot about mindset and persistence, but less about why the war is being lost.
Right. Galland is like, the system is breaking. Rudel is like, have you tried destroying more tanks? Okay, so stepping back, what do these books actually tell us about the Luftwaffe? Because this isn't just about planes and pilots, it's about systems.
Exactly. The consistent theme across these works is that the Luftwaffe wasn't defeated purely in the air. It was defeated by strategic misalignment, industrial limitations, and leadership failures.
And ego. We gotta talk about ego. Because there's a through line here of leaders who are very confident and increasingly disconnected from reality.
That disconnect shows up in resource allocation decisions, misreading Allied capabilities, and failure to adapt doctrine.
Which, if you squint a little, is basically every bad group project you've ever been in. One person is doing all the work, one person thinks everything is fine, and the leader refuses to change the plan.
That may be the most accurate summary of the Luftwaffe's later war performance I've ever heard.
Thank you. I bring academic rigor and relatable trauma. But here's the real takeaway for me. You need both perspectives. You need Galland to understand the system breaking, and Rudel to understand how people keep fighting inside a broken system.
And that's where the real lesson is. Organizations rarely fail all at once. They degrade unevenly. Some parts continue to function at a high level, even as the overall structure collapses.
Which is honestly kind of terrifying, because it means you can look effective while actually losing.
And that's a lesson that extends far beyond World War II aviation.
All right, that's our top 10 Luftwaffe book list, now officially Galland approved. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow, share, and send it to that one friend who thinks air power solves everything.
And if you want to go deeper, check the show notes. We've got links to additional readings and analysis over on Substack.
This is Hope. And remember, if your air strategy depends entirely on one guy with a dive bomber and unlimited confidence, you might be closer to the end than the beginning. See you next time on Mill History Talk.